Situated in the Himalayan foothills, in northern India, the hills of Kumaon stood tall and proud. The Kumaon Hills are a place where nature seems untouched by time. The dense forests on these hills were a haven for wildlife, with swift rivers cutting their way through the valleys below, giving life to many creatures who live in the jungle. The air was filled with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves, creating a symphony that was both soothing and mysterious. Kumaon area is also home to humans, lived in villages and settlements with their cattle and herds. A typical evening in Pali village of Champawat region in Kumaon division. The villagers, weary from a long day's hard work, were making their way home. It's getting late, but a group of women within the jungle are still plucking and gathering fresh leaves for their herds. The noise shatters the silence, disturbing the slumber of the Maneater. Drawn by the disturbance, the Maneater instinctually began to stalk the source of the noise.
The beast had chosen its prey, its eyes fixed on the target, patiently awaiting the perfect moment to strike.
Somewhere in Nepal Terai region, in 1897. In the dense jungles of the Nepali Terai, a tigress was born. Among her siblings, she stood out, not for her size or strength, but for something far more dangerous. For no rhyme or reason, she develops a taste for human flesh. Without warning, she lunged from the bushes, a flash of claws and teeth. As the villagers heard nothing but the rustling of leaves. No scream was heard, no cry for help, just silence and death. And her thirst for blood grew with every kill. The villagers began to live in constant fear, knowing she would strike in broad daylight. Some villagers tried to take matter in their own hands, but she disappeared like a phantom into the shadows of the jungle. In the villages, fear had turned into chaos. The Nepali government had no choice but to take action, summoning their most skilled hunters and soldiers to eliminate the threat. The army chased her for weeks, but each time, she vanished. It was like she could sense their presence, outsmarting every trap.
But one evening,
the soldiers had pushed her to the edge. Tigress is wounded, but undeterred and escaped across the Sharada River. The soldiers are disappointed, but felt a sense of relief. A beautiful morning in Tamli village, near Champawat. Villagers are busy in their daily routine activities. But suddenly, the bright day shifted into a dark and eerie atmosphere. Strange and unsettling sounds echoed from the jungle, unlike anything the villagers had ever heard before. And it wasn't long before Tigress' presence was felt in the Kumaon villages. In the early morning, a villager disappeared, leaving behind only blood-stains and deep footprints of the tiger. As news of the Maneater's arrival spread, fear took hold of the Kumaon villages. Tigress attacks were swift and merciless, striking at dawn, dusk, and even under the full heat of noon. Families huddled in their homes, too afraid to come out, even in broad daylight. And in desperation, villagers turned to forest guards for help. The British colonial administration realized the urgency of the situation and dispatched skilled hunters to put an end to the rampage. Traps were set, but the tigress outsmarted them all and continued on her killing spree. In this time of crisis, the villagers desperately yearned for a miracle. And the tigress had now become the headline in newspapers, drawing the attention of top British officials. In their desperation, the authorities turned to a legendary hunter, famous for his expertise in hunting and love for nature, the James Edward Corbett, well known as Jim Corbett. When news of the Champawat Maneater reached Corbett, he accepted their plea for help, ready to confront the beast. But he made a firm request that all other hunters must be recalled, and any reward should be withdrawn, as he knew that to track the tigress, he needed to work alone and free from distractions. Corbett soon received the news he's been waiting for. Tigress made a kill near village Pali, and without delay, he gathered his team and prepared to leave immediately. Corbett's reputation for courage was unparalleled. Stories of his humanitarian efforts and encounters with wildlife spread far and wide. With his plan in place, Corbett and his team set off into the dense jungles of Kumau. Days of challenging travel through rugged valleys, across rocky rivers, and witnessing the breathtaking beauty of the wilderness brought them to the village of Pali. Corbett wasted no time in gathering information. He spoke with witnesses, piecing together the tigress's patterns and habits. With knowledge and determination, Corbett ventured into the jungle. Days turned into nights, and Corbett searched thoroughly the dense jungle surrounding the village, for hope of finding the Maneater, or even a trace of it which is fading with each passing hour. With a growing sense of despair, realizing that he needed a new approach, so Corbett decided to abandon the search here and head towards the Champawat village. Rumors suggested that the Maneater had found a new hunting ground there. In the evening, when Corbett arrived in Champawat, the villagers were filled with hope, welcoming him with immense love and respect. In the early morning, a group of women and teenage girls moved through the forest and gathering firewood for the day ahead. Their cheerful chatter and laughter carried through the forest, catching the attention of the lurking Maneater. The Maneater began to close in on the group, moving silently through the shadowy ravine, its every step calculated and stealthy, and seizing the first opportunity, it launched a swift and deadly attack. Corbett had only been in Champawat for a few days when news of the brutal attack reached him. Without hesitation, Corbett grabbed his rifle and ammunition, hurried to the village to speak with the terrified witnesses. Gathering as much information as he could, Corbett wasted no time in heading to the site of the attack on the highland. He started following the blood trail deeper into the jungle, with all his senses on high alert. He crossed the ravine and saw footprints of the tigress and a portion of the victim's leg. Suddenly, he felt the sensation of being watched. Instinctively, he raised his rifle and scanning the surroundings. He realized his lack of experience with Maneaters had made him vulnerable. Still, he continued through the rocky terrain, following the trail of blood stains on the rocks. Due to the relentless pursuit, Tigress began to grow increasingly agitated and aggressive. Reluctantly, Corbett decided to return to the village and resume search in the morning, with clear strategy. He shared his plan with the revenue officer to organize a beat to flush out the tigress, and requesting as many volunteers as possible. The next morning, Corbett anxiously stood at the meeting spot. To his surprise, over 250 volunteers had gathered, armed with drums, chimes, and even guns. The revenue officer admitted that he had promised to overlook the unlicensed firearms of any volunteers. After explaining the plan for the beat, Corbett began his detour. However, before he could reach to the ideal spot, the impatient volunteers launched the beat in full force. Now, Corbett had to rush into action for the shot. He had anticipated the tigress approaching from the small hill on his right, a hissing growl from his far left.
After quickly adjusting his position, he took careful aim and fired.
His first shot struck the tigress in the chest and shoulder, and his final shot hit her in the foot, causing her to collapse. The Champawat Maneater is now dead. News of Corbett's victory spread quickly. The villagers, who had lived in fear for years, erupted in celebration. Drums were beaten, fires were lit, and garlands of flowers were placed around Jim Corbett's neck as a symbol of their gratitude. Children laughed and played once more, and peace had returned to the Kumau Hills. Let us get to know some facts. At a very young age, the Champawat Tigress was shot in the mouth by a poacher, which broke her canine teeth and prevented her from hunting her usual prey. The tigress killed and ate more than 450 people in Nepal and India in the early 1900s. The tigress earned a terrifying spot in the Guinness Book of World Records for causing the most deaths by a single animal. Jim Corbett was a legendary figure known for his work as a hunter, naturalist, conservationist, and author. He hunted a total of 33 man-eating tigers and leopards during his lifetime, of which 19 tigers and 14 leopards. India's first national park, established in 1936, was renamed Jim Corbett National Park, in his honor in 1957.